In this video, we are going to look at how to use inline style in the content of a WordPress page. Now, go back to the page that you have changed earlier. Remove all the style that you have written here, the inline style here, for convenience. One ready. There's another thing that I need to let you know here. You need to use this plugin that you have installed earlier in the HTML section of the course. You need to disable this WordPress conversion of the content in order for inline CSS to work. Now, once you have everything checked, you can proceed to type some inline CSS codes. First, you need a style tag, opening, and the closing style tag. This represents that the code in between them is read as inline CSS. So basically, you can put all the codes that you can write in the style sheet right here in the document. Now, this is not a very good way to do things because it will get very messy later. But as a demonstration, you can see how to use inline style for a website. Now, for example, the H2 selector. So I'm selecting this element here and applying the design to this element here. Let's say I want the color now to be green, just to show you the effect of selector. Okay, so if I save and I refresh, it's now green in color. Now, if I go back, I can have more than one design using just one selector. So, example, I want it to be bold as well. If I update and then refresh the page, it should also be now bold. Let me check. Now you can check it using this inspect element tool here, and you uncheck and check. It's the same. That means it is already bold. But to test, you can uncheck the green color here and see that it changes from gray to green. So this is one way you can use the inspector tool to test. One thing I'm going to show you, you can actually type here also and see the effect immediately. So for example, if I want to change the size, now if no effect is taking place, probably you already got the right size. Or maybe there's some other selectors that are overriding the effect. But let me show you something. If I open a new tab and visit the website again, the change in size is not applied here. This means that this particular change that you make in the inspector only applies to this particular view, this page here. And it only works for you, the user that is viewing it. So if another user sees it, it still sees the same page as before. So this is just to help you and guide you which kind of design can fit the website better. The changes are not permanent at all. Okay, let's look at some other styling we can use here. For example, if I want to push this image down, I can use H2 as well here. And by doing a margin bottom of 100 pixels, I can make the image go further down the page. If I close this, if I refresh, you can see that there's a gap here now, which is the margin of 100 pixels from this text here. We can also use the margin top for the picture to move the picture down as well. Now let's look at padding. What if I have padding top of 100 pixels? of padding. Let's say padding of 50 pixels. If I refresh the page, you can see that it has moved this text here, and the picture is now even further away from the text. Now let me inspect element to show you what is happening here. As you can see, the area highlighted in green, that is the padding of the text. For the one in orange color, that is the margin of the text. Currently, it has a margin bottom of 50 pixels, but it has a margin top as well, as you can see here. But we didn't use any margin top. That means something previously, some other coding previously, has already moved it. Yeah, here you can see all H1 or H1 class, H2 or H2 class, H3 element or H3 class have a minimum margin top of 20 pixels. They have also by default a margin bottom of 10 pixels. Now, but because our codes are after this coding here, usually these coding are at the top. So when we put in the content, our styling, we will overwrite the code written here. So if, for example, if I remove this and I inspect it again, you can see that it still has a margin of 10 pixels, while the margin top is 20 pixels. Let me show you something here. I can also use this to show you we can change the background color. Let's say black. Now if I hover over again, you can see that the black color only applies to the area of the padding, but for the margin, it still remains empty. So this can give you a rough idea on how to use padding and margin for the elements in your document. Right now, let's learn a bit more about CSS coding by trying to make three boxes next to each other. Go back to your page and create the three boxes in the div element. Let them have a class of box, or you can call this anything you liked, as long as they are the same for all three. Now in this case, if I use the box selector, the box class selector, I will be targeting all three boxes here, all three elements with the class box here. So if my width is 30%, margin right of 1% maybe, and the float left, background red, height 100%, and hit. If everything is correct, let's see, save, update, and refresh the page. As you can see, there's three red boxes now here. Let me explain to you how they are working. I define the width first, 30%. Now by expressing 30%, I make sure that they are not bigger than the width of the content area. And of course, using the percentage here again, I make sure that they do not push the box to the next line. Let me show you an example. If my width is 40%, the third box here is actually pushed to the next line. This is what happens when you have a float. When you have a float, the elements with the property float left will keep moving to the left when there's a blank space, unless there's a specified margin here or padding. So if there's no float, each div element actually takes up the whole row, and they will be in different rows. So by having a float, they can actually be squeezed to the same row, with a margin here of 1%. And if I make this 30%, if you calculate, this is only about 93% of the full width of the website, or of the content here. So this is how we get all this coding to work together. And then of course you need the height. If there's no height, because there's no content here, if there's no height, then the div element will just disappear. You can see the height is 0 pixel. So the height is very crucial if there's no content within the box, the width and the height. Let me show you how to make them round by having a border radius 150 pixel. It looks relatively round. That's because the height is not a square. So if it's a square, it will probably be round. So let's try to make it a square. Looks pretty round now. So if this is to make sure it's round, 200 pixel, then you get 3 round circles here. You can change the color by clicking this actually, and then choose the color you want. So if I want this green color, I can copy this and paste it back in the code here. And all this as well to make it look like the same. So this is one workflow that you can use to make sure that it becomes how you want it to be. So if I update now, it should look the same as right now here. Yeah, it's the same now. So this is how one thing you can, this is like one way you can couple using this inspect element tool and using inline CSS and using this. So that you see there's a height, double height here. So this one that's after it is overriding the first one. Because I accidentally left one here. So this is unnecessary for now. So we can remove it and update. How to have a 3D effect. So if you want a 3D effect to the circle, let's try using box shadow. Now it's similar to text shadow. Offset first, and then the amount of blur followed by the color. So maybe gray here. You can see it has a bit of the shadow effect. So if I now there's one problem here. As you can see, the circle is being cut off at the bottom. Now this is because these 3 boxes are floats, while the rest behind and in front are not floats. Now when this happens, elements will behave slightly weird. So it's important to have another element to clear the float. So if I edit and I put another element behind with a style of clear both. Now this way, this stops the float from happening after these 3 boxes. Because when there's a float, it makes other elements after it work a bit weird. So we need this clear both to stop the float here and proceed as normal. You can see the circle is now not cut off anymore. Inspect again, box shadow. You can change the color as well. So if now this looks a bit more 3D, so depends on how you want to use it. You can change accordingly. Okay. Now, when you select an element here in Google Chrome, you can hit the plus, and then it will automatically create a new selector with the class you have selected, the element with the class you have selected. So, for example, let's try hover, the special selector. Let's change the background when it hovers. So for example, background change to blue. So when you hover over the box, it should appear blue color. Wow. That is what is happening now. Now, because this is not a link, you won't get the change in mouse cursor when you hover over them. So you can use this also to manipulate. Now the mouse has changed to a pointer.